Hello there, IB Nation Sports Talk. We're up and running. There was no afternoon show today, Jesse. So that's not the one that I wanted to hit. But Salty says no big show this afternoon. You're going to have to land this plane yourself. A lot of pent up need and desire. I don't know what that's all about, but we'll do the best that we can. How's it going today, Jess?
It's going pretty good. Tomorrow's gonna be super busy. Yesterday
Yep.
was super busy, so today was kind of I guess a chill day.
All right. All right. Chill day. See what happens.
Had some
Um,
sushi for lunch. That was really good.
oh, okay. That's good. I had a homemade air fryer pork tenderloin sandwich tonight. So that was choice for dinner.
I forgot you eat dinner at 3 o'clock.
Not quite 3, but I don't like eating dinner. I get done with this show. I do my editing, post it on, the audio on the podcast platform and do all this stuff. I don't like eating, after 8 o'clock. So I eat earlier rather than later. And that way I have like my afternoon snacks and stuff like that after I get off the air, rather than big dinner and everything else. So yesterday, Vince and I did we did a bucket list show. We were going through, bucket list things, sports bucket list that we want to check off. Derek said that he got inspired. He did 2 at once, ran 26.2 miles naked. So got that going for him. Any bucket list items that you want to address before we get started really in full tonight?
So when I think of college sports and college football, I would like to go see a game at the Rose Bowl at some point.
Rose Bowl was on my list as well. You're right. Salty, just to I had plenty of issues last night. I apologize, and I tried to get them all corrected in as many places as I could. I misspelled a name, and things happen. But it's the editing of the audio, not the editing of the words. The words I write are supposed to be edited by someone else. I'm not passing the buck. It's my fault. But yeah, Rose Bowl is on my list as well. I would like to see an actual Rose Bowl game at some point. Maybe that turns out to be Notre Dame, like in a semifinal somewhere down the road. Who knows? We were talking last night. My friend, your godfather, Eric, they own a house just south of Los Angeles and they don't live there full time. So maybe, like if Notre Dame were to play in the Rose Bowl sometime in the near future, we could just take the the Eric house for the week, do a week's worth of podcasting there in Southern California, go to the Rose Bowl. That'd be fun, wouldn't it?
That would be great. That would be the Eric's house would be the party podcast house.
Yeah, and it's not too far from the beach either, so that would be really good. And it's a full size house and the whole thing. Yeah, we do. We're gonna go through. Chi-Town asking if I am in Cincinnati. I am not, but I bought my WKRP shirt in Cincinnati.
I was just in
a few years
Cincinnati
ago.
on Sunday, actually.
How'd that go?
Very hot and humid, actually. Very hot and humid game. It was humid and 90 degrees out, so it was probably feeling like 100. And I was sitting in the outfield, so it was direct sunlight.
Does get a little muggy down there, and if you've had a few
It does.
pops, it gets even
None
sweltier.
of those. None of those.
Oh, okay. Laid low on that, huh?
Yeah, my stomach has not been feeling well for the last 4 days or so. So
That stinks, especially this time of year.
yeah.
Stymie schedule confidence. I'm confident they'll schedule more games on Peacock than they should. Oh, man. I mean, just right to the heart of the matter there. Doing schedule confidence today. And what we're going to do, we're going to go through Notre Dame's schedule. Every game, we're going to rate each game scale of 1 to 10. Our confidence that Notre Dame is going to win that game. And then we'll have some other questions that kind of go with it as well. You ready to do this?
I am. I've been looking forward to this one.
All right, let's do it then. Let's start off Navy in Dublin. Scale of 1 to 10. What's your confidence Notre Dame's going to beat the Midshipmen?
10 out of 10.
Yeah, I'm a 10 as well. I think being at the start of the season helps this out, so it increases my confidence. The last couple of times that they have started off at the start of the season, it has been a blowout in Notre Dame's favor. You get the whole off season, you get your one off with the triple option, you get it out of the way. So I think it could be a very good thing for Notre Dame. I'm a 10 as well. How close though would the score of this game have to be for you to consider it unacceptable? The spread, 20 and a half points, I think.
Well, I was going to put it at 2 touchdowns and a field goal. So I was going to go 17 was anything less than that. I think I would feel as unacceptable. I think this is a game, first game of the year. I think you can let the offense rip and then hopefully get your backups in by the start of the fourth quarter at the latest.
I'm saying 2 touchdowns, 14 points. 2 touchdowns, 2 extra points, 14 points. If it's that close, I don't think that's a really good sign. Now, again, it's the options. You can always, sort of write it off and whatever. But I think this is start of the season. It's a game Notre Dame really should dominate. There's no two ways about it. A loss to Navy, though, would mean blank for Notre Dame's big picture.
A loss to Navy would start the season on the worst foot imaginable. And I think every question about Marcus Freeman would be brought back up and heightened times 2.
You've got major questions. You've got major questions that you don't want to be dealing with if you start the season off with a loss to Navy with a second-year head coach. So predict a score of this game. What's it going to be?
49-17.
49-17. Okay, we're right in the same ballpark. I went 45-21 because you know how that triple option works. They're going to score some points. They're going to come up with a couple of touchdowns. The question will be when. Hopefully it doesn't look anything like last year, but they'll get their points, and they rarely kick field goals, especially once they're behind. So I'm going 45-21 in Notre Dame's favor. All right. So we've got Dublin out of the way. Now we're coming back home. First home game of the season. First ever FCS opponent. First ever HBCU opponent. Tennessee State. They were 4-7 last year. Didn't play a Power 5 team last season. Do I even have to ask? Scale of 1 to 10.
This is another 10 for me. And I really think that you just, kind of laminated why that it should be more than a 10. Tennessee State didn't play a Power 5 team last year, meaning that they lost to teams worse than Power 5 teams. And they're an FCS school. So it's got to be a huge capital 10 out of 10.
I agree. There's just no two ways about it. This is a game that, again, needs to be dominated, should be dominated by Notre Dame, of course, even more so than Navy. I mean, let's be honest, coming back, I think the biggest question is going to be, you're not doing a bye week. You're going straight into a home game against Tennessee State. Jet lag, all that stuff. Is it going to be a concern? There'll be questions about that during the week. It'll come up with Marcus Freeman and the players and everybody else. They'll be asking, so how you feeling? How's your body, after coming back and all that, where's your body clock right now? Is it in Ireland or is it here? All those things are going to come up during the week. I think that's going to be the biggest question. How close would this have to be to be considered unacceptable to you? You went, 21 points on the last one?
17.
You said 17?
Yeah.
So how close would this one have to be considered unacceptable?
30.
I went 24. A little bit, you're still 3+ touchdowns.
I guess I just think about, when Alabama and Georgia play FCS schools and I see it's like 70-0, like that's to me where it's got to be.
Yeah. USMA 87. No, not 3 hours time difference. It is 6 hours time difference between Eastern time and I don't know, and Ireland, basically, unless there is
They'll just get extra sleep.
Yeah. Could be 5. I'm not sure. Or Ireland. I believe Ireland and Great Britain, are both on the same time zone. But Salty is saying 5 hours. I was literally talking to somebody today in England, and there was a 6-hour time difference. So I don't know. On a little Zoom call today, but 5 hours, 6 hours, either way, it's more than 3. So 5 hours is still, it's only 3 hours from West Coast to East Coast, right? Yeah. So it's going to be a bigger time difference than you usually have to deal with when you're jumping around and playing in different time zones. USMA 87 says he thinks it's 5 o'clock in Dublin right now. Again, either case, 5 hours is still a good time difference, whether it's 5 or 6. It's going to be, again, it's going to be more than just going like Eastern time zone to Pacific time zone when you're talking about at least a 5-hour time difference. Okay, so we're scale of 1 to 10. We are 10 out of 10 on both Navy and Tennessee State. Now things get at least a little bit more challenging. They go to North Carolina State for game 3. We know that this is going to be a noon kickoff as well. So scale of 1 to 10, Jess, what's your confidence in a win over NC State?
I will put my confidence in a team like North Carolina State. I'll put it, you know what? I'll put it at 8.5, I think is where I will stop it at. I don't think it deserves a 9, and I don't think it deserves an 8. So I'll stop. You know what? Actually, I'm going to go with an 8. I think that North Carolina State is a game that they should win. But there are, every 4 or 5 years or so, it seems, they put together a really solid team. So I'm not saying that, I expect them to lose. I just find them to be much more competitive in recent years compared to Navy and Tennessee State, obviously.
Yeah, I went with the number that you said first. I'm going 8.5 is my confidence here. I'm very solid. Look, NC State, they're going to have a new quarterback. They get both Brennan Armstrong and Robert Anai from Virginia, the quarterback and offensive coordinator combination. They'll play UConn in their first game, and then they get a bye week, so that'll be, again, like Notre Dame, it's such a weird schedule this year because Notre Dame doesn't get its first bye week until October, and then they get another one. They play 2 more games, and then they get another bye week in November. So it's going to be really odd, but they've got to play a good chunk of games in succession after going to Ireland, where, by the way, I did just check, it is a 5-hour time difference. So it is currently 6:17 here Eastern time in South Bend. It is 11:17 p.m. in Ireland right now. So we've got a 5-hour time difference. But I think that this is a game that, again, NC State, of the 3 first opponents, really of the first 4 opponents, should give Notre Dame the best game of all of them. But I'm still really confident that the Irish are going to be able to win. How close would this one have to be? Do you think this could be a pretty close competitive game? You're not 10 out of 10, but you're still pretty confident.
I'll go with 14 on this one.
I went with 10. 14 was my Navy close. Like, if it's well, let me put it this way: if it's less than 10 points, if it's single digits, then it's like, because then maybe you're looking forward a little bit to a couple of weeks, which we'll get here. And I mean, this is a team, NC State. They lost to Clemson last year. Okay, you can forgive that. Clemson went 8-0 in the ACC, but they lost to Boston College and Syracuse and Louisville last season. Now, again, they're at least theoretically getting better offensively this year, but I just think that Notre Dame's defense is really going to be able to lock them down. So a loss, though, would mean what to Notre Dame's big picture and, Marcus Freeman's big picture as well?
I think big picture wise, this would hurt considering, what you have on the back half of the schedule, I think it would start to, at least for me, I wouldn't be full on panic mode when it comes to Marcus Freeman, but the eyebrow would be raised a little bit. And I think you would have to start looking at him under a different lens going forward the rest of the season, because it feels like the same kind of spot of that Marshall game last year. And you don't want to dig yourself a hole that early in the season and already kind of use your mulligan against NC State. Because, I mean, let's be honest, going undefeated and perfect every year, yes, it's a possibility and a realistic one, but it's still very hard to do at the end of the year. So I think that if your one loss is going to be somewhere, it can't be to North Carolina State, the third game of the season. Yep. So I think I would start the conversation of, are we following similar trends to last year?
I concur. So predict a score for this game then. Notre Dame, North Carolina State.
I think that this one would come down to 33 to 17 sounds about right.
I was in that ballpark. I actually only went one more point. I went 34 to 17. I think Notre Dame holds North Carolina State below 20 points. Again, they might put up a little bit. Brennan Armstrong's a good quarterback, but a lot of turnovers, that he had last year. And I think that this is going to be the first real challenge for Notre Dame's defense. And I think that they'll come through, and I think the offense is going to have a chance to light it up as well. What about Central Michigan now? A 4-8 team out of the MAC. They were 3-5 in their conference last year. They start off at Michigan State, then they get New Hampshire, and they play South Alabama the week after Notre Dame. So what's your confidence in this one?
I'm going to put this one at a whopping, I'm going to go 8 out of 10 again. And I think that North Carolina State is better than Central Michigan, but Notre Dame has a proven track record of not handling MAC opponents to their full potential from at least the last 5 or 10 years.
That's true. Ball State, Toledo, both a little bit scary. Could Central Michigan put a real scare?
I mean, Toledo was more than scary. They got kind of very fortunate that they came back and sealed that game at the end.
Yeah, exactly. So you went what? 8.5?
8.
You went 8? Okay. Yep. Derek is saying 10. Tommy Guns is saying BK has that track record. Well, fair point. Those are both BK games. Chi-Town says 9.5. I'm with Chi-Town on this one. I'll allow a small margin of error, but this is, like, to answer the question that we've been asking, this is catastrophic if Notre Dame were to lose to Central Michigan. Really, 3 of the first 4 games are catastrophic, I think, if Notre Dame loses any
I agree.
of the, 3 of those first 4 other than North Carolina State. North Carolina State still very distressing, and in terms of big picture national championships, New Year's Six Bowl, all those different things, it would definitely alter that. But the other 3, catastrophic if you lose to Central Michigan, Tennessee State, or Navy. But now we're getting into the meat of the schedule, because here comes the big boy. Ohio State rolling into town, coming off an 11-2 record last year, 1 loss in Big Ten play, of course, that being to the Michigan Wolverines. What is your level of confidence that Notre Dame not could beat Ohio State? What's your level of confidence that they will beat Ohio State?
My level of confidence that they will beat Ohio State is a 6 out of 10. I believe that so to me, that means 60%. It would be a 5 out of 10, meaning it would be a toss-up, 50-50 if I went with a 5. I'm going with the 6 because, to me, what gives Notre Dame that slight advantage from a 5 to a 6 is they have a quarterback who's played in college football for 50 years. And Ohio State has a guy who has never started a college football game in his career, and this is going to be his toughest matchup and on the road at the same time. And it'll be a matter of, can Marvin Harrison Jr. and the rest of the crew dig that young quarterback out of the hole? Can their talent, basically bridge that gap in the quarterback play?
That's exactly it. Is it going to be Kyle McCord? Is it going to be Devin Brown? No matter who it is, they're going to be vastly less experienced than Sam Hartman when they take the field at Notre Dame Stadium. There's going to be a huge difference in experience, and they're going to be coming into, a different environment. One of the big questions, what's that environment going to look like? Is it going to be 50% red in the stadium? Vince said yesterday that he was over on campus, and this older couple drove up to him, and they've got their red, they've got their scarlet on, and they're scouting out, trying to find out where you park when you come to a Notre Dame game. They're scouting, they're doing their advanced scouting almost 3 months in advance on where you
do
park
it now
at a Notre
before
Dame game.
the weekend of the game, because it'll just be nuts.
Yeah. In Ohio State, they start off with Indiana, that they've got Youngstown State, Western Kentucky in their first 3 weeks, and then Maryland 2 weeks after Notre Dame. They get their bye after Notre Dame. The quarterback experience is going to be huge. And again, I go back to 2 years ago. C.J. Stroud did not start his career off strong. Now, he finished the season really strong, and obviously he had a really good season last year, but the start of his career was really shaky, and they don't know exactly who it's going to be right now. Now, again, they'll have 3 warm-up games. Whoever the quarterback is, he'll have 3 warm-up games under his belt by the time he gets to Notre Dame, so he'll at least have some experience. But I'm giving this, I don't think I can say 5, because then you're just, you're sitting the fence and you're going, well, it can go either way. I'm going to hedge a little bit under and say 4.5. I saw there was a vast kind of array of different confidences that I saw come up. Kenneth O'Donnell says 8 to 10. Well, okay, that's a range. We Are Not Marshall said 4. Lance
That's a confidence interval.
Yeah, that's right. That's a confidence interval. USMA 87 said 4. Mr. 2.0 said 5. And Derek said 9.999.
Yeah, but Derek starts drinking at 3 o'clock every day. So
see, that's exactly where it's at. Little whatever's in the lemonade there, wherever Derek happens to live. So I'm going to go 4.5. I just feel like we've been down this road before. We've built ourselves up. Well, Notre Dame can win. That if they do this, they're going to have experience in a lot of different places. Again, the quarterback being the biggest one, that they don't typically have. They're going to have some advantages in this game that they haven't necessarily had against some of these big opponents of the past. The question is, can they finally get over the hump? Because, whether it's Georgia, home or away, all these other, different big matchups that they have, can they punch through? I'm going to give it a 4.5 is my confidence.
A lot of people in the chat have started to kind of talk about it last year. I think the disappointing thing that Marcus Freeman kept talking about is how Notre Dame was going to control the trenches against Ohio State. And that simply didn't happen. Ohio State was actually the team whose defensive and offensive lines controlled the game when it mattered. Mm-hmm. I really need to see a flip of the script this year. I think that's going to be the big thing. Obviously, we know Sam Hartman's going to be asked to throw the ball, and he'll be better back there than Tyler Buckner, sitting back there in his first collegiate game. But in order for them to be completely effective, they got to be able to run the ball, and that's got to be, controlling the offensive line, because the last thing that you want to do in any Ohio State game, given that their athleticism and speed all over the offensive side of the ball, is you can't allow it to turn into a track meet, or you're just never going to catch up. So you control the tempo of the game by being able to run the ball and sustain some longer possessions. Let me ask you this question.
Okay.
How many points would Notre Dame, if Notre Dame were to lose, what would be your maximum cap where you would say, okay, I still feel relatively solid about this? Or I guess, where does it turn into, this is just not good. Like, this Ohio State game needed to be closer than this.
Like what does Notre Dame need to score, or how close does it need to be
If
to
Notre
feel
Dame were
good
to lose, how much could they lose by, and you still feel comfortable?
and still feel like it's a decent loss,
Yeah,
air quotes, if that's what you want to call it? I think a touchdown game, like
yeah.
a competitive touchdown game throughout, and one that is either a defensive slugfest and neither team is really scoring, to an extent, something, a little bit like last year, not necessarily the most aesthetic, but considering it's going to be game 4 for both teams, I think the offenses should be clicking a little bit more by then. So I was going to, like I was saying, either a defensive kind of game or an offensive kind of game. I would feel really good about Notre Dame if they put up at least 4 touchdowns in a competitive game against Ohio State. Again, we're not in it for moral victories right now because it's a program that's trying to get over the hump, but they're also doing it with a second-year head coach who has his own questions to address. But at the same, I'm just saying, like, I would not feel like it's the end of the world. I would not feel like if all is lost if they play a competitive 1 touchdown game against Ohio State.
Ohio State hasn't been to Notre Dame since 1996.
Eddie George.
And
You were
before
just
that, it
you were
was
just a little pup.
yeah, solid. What was that? That had to be maybe 6 months old, 7 months old.
Mm-hmm. That's right. How would a win change your opinion of Marcus Freeman if they beat Ohio State?
It would forgive one of the games last year. I would forgive him and permanently erase my memory of the Marshall game.
The only problem with that is, they beat Clemson in the same season they lost to Marshall and Stanford, right? Now, Clemson came later, so it definitely, that altered our opinions of it a little bit. I just think
I think that it would show that Marcus Freeman took a step in his second year, and
right.
he himself as a coach got better.
And you're also
He grew
saying
as a coach.
You're also saying Notre Dame as a program is rapidly evolving, assuming that they're 5-0 coming
They're
out of that
getting
game.
it would be
Or
to
is that
them.
4-0?
Notre Dame is in a hole right now as a program in terms of big games, playoff appearances, New Year's Six appearances, all of the above. And if they win this game, I think they get 1 foot out of the hole and the second foot is still in there. And then they could potentially get out of that hole on a national level if they can do what they did against Ohio State to USC.
Yeah. So you want to predict a score? Notre Dame, Ohio State?
I think that this one is going to be actually relatively low scoring when it's all said and done. I think it's a game that's somewhere in the 20s on both sides. I'm going to say 27-23. Either way.
Yeah, I'm going 24-21. I'm going even a little bit lower than you. Either way, 24-21. Field goal game. This will be like classic Notre Dame Michigan games, the early 90s. Is what it'll be like. All right, then it's on to Duke after Ohio State. An interesting team that turned it around, 3-9 the year before Mike Elko. They go 9-4 in his first season last year. So, what's your confidence in a win over the Blue Devils?
So my confidence over the Blue Devils is going to be, and actually, it might surprise some people. It's going to be 7 out of 10.
Okay.
And the reason why I say that is there's a couple factors. One, I believe Notre Dame will be 5-0 going into that game.
Ooh,
And
so
I
now
think
all of a sudden you didn't actually make a prediction during the Ohio State conversation, and now we're talking about Duke, and you're saying it's a win.
Yes,
How'd
I
that
do.
happen?
I just that's where I think they can get through that Ohio State game, just where that game is at in the season, and again the inexperience of the overall play caller that's going to be at the realm for Ohio State. But I see that as a trap game after starting 5-0, coming off the big home win. You got to go on the road. Mike Elko is familiar with the program. He knows a little bit of the ins and outs. I think he's going to have an edge on Marcus Freeman and gamesmanship. Like I think in a game of chess, coaching chess, I think Elko would beat out Marcus Freeman. The only thing to me is, can Notre Dame's talent outweigh that and the combined possibility of a trap game after, on the road after starting 5-0? So I'm actually going to sit this down at about a 7 out of 10.
Yeah. If they beat Ohio State, then it's a massive trap game the next week with everything, going on the road and Mike Elko and the whole thing. They lose, it's a little different story, because then, you definitely have to change your focus very fast to avoid a potential 2 in a row. Here's, as good as Duke was last year, give Mike Elko all the credit in the world for doing what he did at Duke last year, because again, it was a 6-game improvement, 6-win improvement from one year to the next. He's a defensive coach. Not surprisingly, they predominantly did it with defense. Their opponents put the ball on the ground 36 times last year. They recovered 24 of them. They ended up with a plus 16 turnover ratio. If you look at their expected turnover margin, it should have been plus 5.5 based on, everything that happened last year. It turned into plus 16. So my biggest question, for Duke is, can they duplicate that? I think that getting those turnovers, causing those turnovers, plus 16 is going to be really hard to duplicate. And again, that's how they were able to go from 3 wins to 9 wins in one season. It's kind of like the first season Tyrone Willingham had in 2002. Everything was on the defense that season. They did so much with the defense. The offense was not that good, and that showed the next 2 years. They completely fell back down to earth by the end of 2002, and of course into 2003 and 2004 as well. So I'm not saying Duke is going to collapse like that, but I just think it's going to be really hard to duplicate. So I'm more confident. I'm an 8 on a Notre Dame win over Duke, just because, again, I think that, like, across the board, it's going to be hard for Duke to match up with Notre Dame. They've got a good quarterback, good dual threat quarterback in Riley Leonard, but I think it's going to be hard for them across the board to match up. So I'm giving Notre Dame, my confidence in a Notre Dame win is an 8 in this one. But I mean, obviously, you lose to Duke, and again, everything changes in terms of what, the season's going to be, what, the big picture looks like, the whole thing for Notre Dame and for Marcus Freeman. You want to predict a score on this one?
At Duke, the Dukies. I'm going to go 24-21 Notre Dame.
24-21? I'm going to go much higher than that. I'm going to go, maybe not much higher than that. I'm going to go 30-17 Notre Dame is my prediction for Notre Dame and Duke. Now it's on to Louisville. What's your confidence in that one?
For Louisville, I would go 9 out of 10. Especially if they underperform against Duke. I think that kind of relights the fire there a little bit. You get back home. Louisville's a traditionally, outside of the Lamar Jackson teams and some here and there, they haven't been very good. And I think that trend continues. It should be an easy win at home against Louisville.
They had a nice season, 8-5 under Satterfield last year, who of course left to go to Cincinnati. Jeff Brom leaves Purdue, 2 games over 500 in his 6 seasons at Purdue. Interestingly enough, Jack Plummer has transferred to Louisville. Jack Plummer was at Purdue 2 years ago. He was the Cal quarterback last year, and this will be the 3rd year in a row for a 3rd different team. Jack Plummer, assuming he's healthy, starts against Notre Dame. So that'll be kind of an interesting little thing, as Jack Plummer and Jeff Brom are reunited. I'm like 8.5, 9 on this one as well. I'm really confident in Notre Dame down there against Louisville. How close would this have to be, as confident as you are, to be unacceptable to you?
17.
17 would be unacceptable. I would go closer than that. I would go like 13, I think. Again, I expect a fairly resounding Notre Dame victory, but predict a score.
34 to 13.
34 to 13.
Yep.
I'm going to go 38 to 21.
Okay.
All right. So that's Louisville. And now we roll into October 14th. Southern Cal comes to town. So what's your confidence in a Notre Dame victory over USC?
I'm going to have to go 5 out of 10 on this one. A straight toss-up, 50-50.
Okay.
I think Notre Dame is edged in the category in the quarterback category. I think Notre Dame edges in the running back game. I think the offensive lines are a toss-up. I think that the wide receivers right now, USC has the edge. I don't know if that'll be the same by the time that game rolls around. And then defensively, I think Notre Dame has the edge. So I just feel like it's a lot of just, Notre Dame might be a little bit better at this. USC counters by being a little bit better at that. You know what? I'm actually going to go 5.5 out of 10. And the only reason I'm leaning that extra 0.5 towards Notre Dame is because it is a home game for them. And I think that is a big difference compared to last year. And that this game is more so, at the middle of the season compared to the back end. But I will go 5.5 out of 10 solely because, again, I think it's going to be across the board. It's going to be very minimal difference between almost every position group. And I think that Notre Dame and the atmosphere potentially at that stadium is what would give them the slight advantage.
This is probably the best quarterback matchup in a Notre Dame USC game since Brady Quinn and Matt Leinart.
I would agree with that.
Push, right?
Yes. I guess what scares me the most about this game is if Caleb Williams is better this year, because he was already excellent last year.
Mm-hmm.
If he can find ways to improve, whatever that might be, it might not even be something that we see. It could be something mentally or his reads, whatever. I think he's going to be better. And that's really scary for me.
Yeah. Seeing like people saying Mr. 2.0, USC probably the toughest team. Caleb Williams will be a bear. Chi-Town says it'll be a shootout, and whoever has the ball last will win. And I agree. I think there are going to be some points on the board, but I think Notre Dame is going to have the best defense on the field.
Oh, yeah.
And I think that'll
be the biggest difference. Can the defense make up enough for some of the other stuff?
I think that they will find a way to make a couple plays, as good as Caleb Williams. Like if, again, like if you've got a different quarterback for Notre Dame last, and I'm not saying Drew Pine played a horrible game against USC. He played a solid game, but he committed a couple of crucial turnovers. They don't commit those 2 turnovers. They probably win last year's game in the Coliseum. And I think with Sam Hartman, now Hartman, he's committed some turnovers of his own in the past, but I think that they're going to make some plays. This is going to be one of the most, it could end up being the most exciting Notre Dame USC game since Bush Push in 2005. And I do think it's going to come right down to the end. Notre Dame has not lost back-to-back games, by the way, against Southern Cal since Pete Carroll's last 2 years, 2008, 2009. I don't see it happening this year. So I'm pretty confident. I give Notre Dame a 7 for my confidence. Again, I think it's going to be a great game, and we're sitting here talking about it in June, but my confidence that Notre Dame will win is a 7 right now because of the defense.
I would be up there. Put it like this. Al Golden needs to learn from last year. If Caleb Williams extends plays on his feet like he did last year, Notre Dame has no shot of winning that game. They need to find a way to have that man bracketed at all times. And that's a lot harder said than done. But he cannot be able to extend drives with his legs. He can't, meaning picking up a first down, scrambling, and he can't run out, run all over the pocket and allow and expect, and have Notre Dame secondary be expected to cover, wide receivers longer than 5, 6, 7 seconds.
Andre saying Notre Dame needs to score about 45 a game, except SC, Ohio State, Clemson. Come on, guys. We have Sam Hartman, right? You both are a little disappointing in your predictions. I mean, Jesse has them beating Ohio State. So, I've got them winning, with pretty good certainty, all but Ohio State so far. I guess he's just saying maybe that he thinks that, the offensive production is going to be a little bit higher. And that's probably fair. You're probably right, because I think that we've been saying with what we expect from Hartman this year, we do expect a lot more out of the offense. A lot more octane. You're probably right. I probably still got Tommy Rees BK PTSD kind of hold me back in terms of what the point production is going to look like. You're probably right. You're going to see a lot more points than we're used to seeing. So
I saw a good chat in here by ND Sheet. Definitely needs to be a Jalen Sneed game. And I agree with that, because Jalen Sneed is the perfect QB spy against someone like Caleb Williams.
Right. Yeah. Josh says, can they stop the run? Didn't do a good job last year against USC. Look, they changed the whole defense to face USC last year, and it didn't go well. And if you read the article,
USC flipped the script.
Yeah. If you read the article Brian Driscoll just put up at Irish Breakdown, he, talked to Marcus Freeman about that and the fact that, that's not something that's going to happen this year. It's like they're going to figure out who they are. They know more right now about who they are. They're not just going to, try to completely rearrange their offense in a week's time based on one opponent. They're going to know their strengths by then. So, yeah, I think there's going to be a lot of points in this game. I think we're looking at both teams at least in the 30s in this game. And I saw somebody
It'll be the highest combined score of the season.
I think so too. I think, where was it? Matt was saying Hartman should be able to light up a bad USC defense, leads to no less than 4 touchdowns. Don't disagree with that at all. By the way, there was a comment that Matt made earlier, I think, about the Ohio State game. I'm going to save that for rapid fire. I've been kind of, I started that up, and we're going to use that here in a little bit. So then they finally get their bye week. They play 8 straight games. They get their first bye after 8 games. And then you've got Phil Jurkovec coming back to Notre Dame, little cultural appropriation.
Ship him up to Boston. Stadium.
That's right. Pittsburgh, 9-4 last year, the Fighting Narduzzi's. So what do you think about this one? What's your confidence in a win over Pitt?
Coming off the bye, well rested. Phil will probably say something stupid again before the game. I'll put this one at a solid 8.5 out of 10. I just think at this point in the season, you should be clicking and rolling, and you should no longer, the thought or even the possibility of losing to a team like Pittsburgh really shouldn't even be a thing. And I'm saying that they'll split at the very worst with USC and Ohio State. So I think coming into that game, they have 1 loss. And you have to know what the expectations are with coming off a bye week with 4 games left and 1 more bye week. You just got to start handling business in that last month, those last 4 games. And I think that starts with Pitt. So I'll put that one at 8.5.
Interesting. Pitt, since 2010, 3 schools have won the ACC. Clemson, of course, Florida State, and of course it's been a little bit since Florida State, but Pitt 2 years ago, the only other school besides Clemson and Florida State to win the ACC since 2010. But of course, they did it with a generational quarterback, Kenny Pickett, who's now at the Pittsburgh Steelers. Ton of roster turnover this year, though. Like what they've done, the last couple of years, they've had some consistency there across the board, especially up front defensively. They lose a lot of that this year. They lose, their leading passer from a year ago. They lose their leading rusher, their leading receiver, their pass rushers and their safeties. All these different key guys on both sides of the ball are going to be gone. Now get Phil Jurkovec. What's he going to look like by, week 9 or 10 of the season? Is he going to be banged up again? He had to miss, obviously, the game last year. I'm a 9 on this. Really, it's a 10, but I'm going 9 just to allow, a little bit of variance there. Mine's a 9 that Notre Dame will win. What's your score prediction against the Panthers? Pat Narduzzi, of course, another defensive-minded head coach.
I'm going to go 41-21.
I was going to say, just for Andre, I'm going to go 42 to 17. That's what I think it'll be.
Okay.
Because we haven't been predicting enough points. All right, now they go to Clemson, off to Tigerland.
I'm just going to be I'm going to be upfront about this. This is the game I am the least confident in Notre Dame's schedule. I'm more confident in USC and Ohio State. I think I'm going to.
You were what, 6 on Ohio State?
5.5. No. 5.5? Yes. 6 Ohio State, 5.5 on USC. I'm going to put this game at a 4 out of 10 on my scale. I don't think that last year's butt whooping in South Bend is going to sit well with Dabo Swinney. I don't think it has sat well with Dabo Swinney. I think that he's heard the noise about what Notre Dame did, and it was embarrassing for him, to lose like that on the national stage against Notre Dame. And playing in Death Valley is already hard enough. Dabo will have these guys fired up. I just think that there's, and especially if Notre Dame is coming into this game potentially undefeated, I think that jacks up Clemson even more. I'm saying that they're going to win both of those games. So I think going into this game, they will be undefeated. So that plays into it for me as well. But this is the game I am the most worried about. And this is it's funny because I was at a wedding here in Cleveland over the weekend. And the bride's family was from Southern Cal, and a good family friend was there, and huge Notre Dame fan, actually graduated from Notre Dame. And we had like a 30-minute conversation about Notre Dame football. And this was the game that we all came to the conclusion that there's just a lot riding on it. And again, to me, the biggest factor is how bad Notre Dame embarrassed Clemson last year. And I think that rolls over into this season.
Yeah, I mean, they've got a new offensive coordinator. They made that change after, I think 1 year, went and grabbed Garrett Riley from TCU to go with Cade Klubnik. How much of a difference is that going to make after he turned Max Duggan into a Heisman finalist at DCU? I think Clemson is going to be fired up. Defense is a question for them, though. Just like it was against Notre Dame with what Notre Dame did to them last year. They gave up 30 at the end of the season to South Carolina, 31 to Tennessee in the Orange Bowl. How much better is the defense going to be this year? I think that is a huge question for Clemson. So I'm more confident than you on this. It's a 6 for me. I think that maybe, some people overlook it a little bit just because, again, of what Notre Dame did last year. But
by your predictions, we might as well chalk up the 12-0 season.
It's not like I'm giving Ohio State, USC, and Clemson's like I'm giving Notre Dame 9s on these, but I
know, but if you're over 5, that means you think that they're going to win, and you've been over 5 against all 3 of them.
I mean, you should be like just amazed at the numbers that I'm giving because
I'm
notoriously.
That's why I brought it up.
Tough grader, so that's right. Like people should be taking note of this confidence that I have right now. All right. So do you want to predict a score then?
I will predict the score. I think that this game will be 27, no, 30-24 Clemson.
I think it's going to be another offensive game because again, I'm not sold on Clemson's defense. Again, I think Notre Dame is going to be better defensively than Clemson in this game. And once again, you're going to have a quarterback advantage for Notre Dame with Sam Hartman, who threw 5 touchdowns against Clemson last year. Now, different system, so it's but still, I think that the tide is, last year was the start of a tide turning moment, between Notre Dame and Clemson in terms of, who's got some talent stocked up. So I think this is going to be a 38-34 game either way.
I think, as much as it pains me to say this, I would rather Notre Dame, and I think the opposite is going to happen, but I would rather Notre Dame lose to Ohio State and beat Clemson rather than beat Ohio State and lose to Clemson. Because I think it's too later in the season. And I think that might be something
what
that
it could do
hurt
to where
them.
you're going to go in terms of bowl games.
When you only have 2 games left and they're Wake Forest and Stanford, I think it's hard to regain yourself a little bit and put an exclamation towards the end of the year when a loss is lingering.
Yeah, good point. Good point. Chi-Town predicting a low-scoring game, 19-16. Lance saying 31-21, Notre Dame. And Salty says he's 7 out of 10 confident a win against Clemson. Notre Dame beat them when they know what the plays were going to be. That's a structural defeat. I don't see a 1-year fix. Okay. Wake Forest, then, and actually a bye week first, the second bye week. Again, they play 8 games, bye, 2 games, bye, and now you've got 2 games. This will be senior day. Wake Forest and a reunion, of course, for Sam Hartman with his whole team.
This is a 10 out of 10. I think after losing to Clemson, going into the bye week, coming back, knowing what's expected the last 2 games of the year, it being senior day, it being the Sam Hartman's reunion against Wake Forest, all of the above. I just think they absolutely tear Wake Forest up, and I think that they might even hang their first 50 piece of the season on Wake Forest.
Yeah, I agree. I think they're going to come out rolling. Wake will probably find a way to score some points. They're going to have a 5'11" sophomore, Mitch Griffiths, most likely the quarterback. Not a very big guy that they'll roll out there, but their defense has just been a sieve. Over the last 5 years, they've given up more than 44 points a game in their losses, and I think it's going to be more of the same. You're exactly right. It's going to be senior day. I think Notre Dame is going to have a chance to be pushing 50, and Wake might actually even have a tougher time scoring points despite that offense that they run. So I agree. I think this is going to be a lot of points for Notre Dame and not much for Wake. And then, of course, Notre Dame closes the regulars. And so
my score was 48-13 for those.
48-13. Okay.
Yes.
I'll go 47-19 in Notre Dame's favor.
All right.
And I'm a 10 out of 10 as well. And then at Stanford to close out the regular season. Confidence there.
I put this as a 10 out of 10. I would say these last 2 games, I feel extremely confident in. I would go even more to say like 11 out of 10. I think because of what we were just talking about for Wake Forest, but furthermore for Stanford, I think this is where you put your punctuation on the season after going 11-1, reminding everyone why you deserve the opportunity, and what the resume did. And I think Marcus Freeman, like Dabo Swinney, is embarrassed about what happened last year. And I think he goes to Palo Alto and absolutely destroys Stanford. He does not hold back, and he tries to get he tries to get, everyone to remember or to forget about the Stanford game last year. And I think it's another one where they get close to 50 points back-to-back weeks.
Another new head coach that Notre Dame will go up against at Stanford. I agree. It's a 10 out of 10 for me as well. And I would put this like in the 45 to 20 range. Don't know exactly what that offense will look like, but I'll go 45-20 in Notre Dame's favor.
I will go 52-17.
You don't think all those rowdy Stanford fans will keep it close out there?
I don't think so. I think the only advantage of playing out there is that you'll be in California in November. That'll be the only good thing for Stanford.
Jesse, we've been at this for a while now. Good confidence picks tonight. Are you ready
big
for
segment?
rapid fire? Yes.
I am ready for rapid fire.
Let's do it. I'm going to start you with this because Matt put in a comment earlier.
And it's Stanford's first season with a new head coach.
Exactly.
I forgot that as well.
Exactly.
It is going to be a very ugly showing for Stanford. Sorry.
Yep. So Matt said Hartman at quarterback last year, and we win by a couple of scores against Ohio State. He thinks Ohio State loads the box to stop the run. Hartman lights up the Buckeyes backfield in a big win. My question to you simply, if Sam Hartman is the quarterback last year, does Notre Dame beat Ohio State?
I would say no. I'm going to say no, but I think it would have looked prettier. I think Notre Dame would have shown more production on the offensive side of the ball, obviously. But I still think that given the circumstances of where the team was under Marcus Freeman as being a first-time head coach, being on the road in a big environment, being who Ohio State was running out there with CJ Stroud and those wide receivers, I do think that Ohio State would have snuck the game out, but I would have put it down to like whoever had the ball last and a field goal to kind of win it as time is expiring.
You know what? I tend to agree. Like, I hadn't really thought about it before he said that. It ended up being an 11-point game as it was, and the game, of course, got away late. The zero blitz, was obviously a game changer, as we all know. I think that they are a lot less conservative if they have a veteran quarterback out there as opposed to a first-time starter on the road. So at the very least, I think it comes down to one possession at the end of the game. I don't know necessarily that translates into a win because, again, you're talking about Marcus Freeman's second game as a head coach, and you do still have, some other questions, in that game, in terms of experience with the offensive line and, some different things like that, wide receivers. But I think at the very least, it comes down to one possession at the end of the game instead of losing by 11. I think it is, I think having an experience at quarterback definitely would have changed the complexion of that game, even if they don't end up winning ultimately. Fill in the blank. After going 4-0 against ACC opponents last season, Notre Dame has won 28 consecutive regular season games against the ACC. It would be blank if that streak ends this season.
It would be moderately surprising if that streak ends this season because, we look at who the ACC opponents are on the schedule. North Carolina State, Duke, Louisville, Clemson, Pitt, and Wake Forest. So I believe by my count, that is 5 of the 12 games. I think that, based on what I said, they're going to lose one of those games at Clemson. So it would be a moderate surprise to me. And I'm not saying, I still think Notre Dame could beat Clemson. It's just a matter of, obviously how things come together. So if they lost one of those, I'd be moderately surprised. If they win all of those, I would also be moderately surprised. If they lose more than 2 ACC games this year, then I would say that there would be need for concern.
Yeah, last regular season loss, remember, goes all the way back to 2017 against Miami because the losses that they've had to Clemson have been in the college football playoff and in the ACC championship game since then. So, I agree. Especially if the loss is to Clemson, yeah, it's not necessarily a shocker because it is Clemson and we expect a good competitive game against Clemson. And like we're saying, we expect a lot of points. If it's one of the other teams, North Carolina State, Duke, Louisville, Wake Forest, then again, it goes back to what we were talking about. Then you've got alarm bells going off because then you're losing games that you're not supposed to lose. At some point, this streak is going to end. Like, if it's going to end, you would much rather it be to a good Clemson team than one of these other ACC teams
Correct.
that we're talking about. Rushman brought up the point that Hartman was out in week 1 last year. And as Derek said, it's a hypothetical. We're not talking literally, last year. We're just talking about if Sam Hartman is the quarterback kind of thing. I mean, it's a fair point, but fill in the blank. 24/7 Sports projects Notre Dame to play Oregon in a New Year's Six Bowl this season. It would be blank if that happens.
It would be indicative of Notre Dame going 10-2 in the regular season if they play Oregon in a New Year's Six bowl game. Because if they go 11-1, I believe they're in the playoff, considering that 2 of those 3 wins would be against a combination of Ohio State, Clemson, and USC. So to me, 2 losses equal New Year's Six. 1 loss and above means playoff. So to me, that shows exactly how the season would end on Notre Dame's side of things.
Okay, I don't know really what you exactly said there, but I'll go with that. I just think it would be cool to see Notre Dame and Oregon play, in a New Year's Six Bowl. They've only played 4 times ever. They haven't played since 1982. It almost feels like they've never played before, but they very rarely played. I think it would be an interesting matchup as well. Bo Nix and that whole thing, and Sam Hartman. I think that it would be an interesting matchup. And if you're in a New Year's Six Bowl, what do you got to do? You got to win one of these things sooner or later, right? So, but I think it would be a nice, fun little matchup. Going back to Duke, Stymie says Duke's quarterback is legit. I'm a fan. Don't sleep on him. I brought him up, Riley Leonard. Again, dual threat quarterback. He's going to be one of those, kind of like maybe like a little Caleb Williams light, kind of thing. I feel like they're a team that Notre Dame should be able to make one-dimensional. And so much of what they did last year was on their defense. And it's not like they played a power pack schedule either, So it's a game that I feel pretty confident that Notre Dame should be able to win.
I mean, Oregon and North Carolina was a close bowl game, and Notre Dame handled North Carolina at North Carolina.
Yeah. By the way, Salty wants to know, Jess, did you think about buttoning up and decided to keep?
It's funny. This if at work, I realized I was at work and I actually buttoned one of these buttons, but if I wasn't at work, there would be no buttons. So the V would have only gotten deeper. Unfortunately, I just forgot that it was buttoned, and now I'm off work and didn't unbutton it.
All right. Something new we're going to drop in here over the next few weeks. What college team we're going to name an NFL team, and you have to say what college team reminds you of them. So we're going to start. We're Cowboys fans. Let's just go Dallas Cowboys. What college team reminds you of the Dallas Cowboys?
So there's 2 that come to mind. For the first one, everyone should probably plug their ears because they're not going to like this one. But I would actually say Notre Dame and the Cowboys have a lot of similarities of having a very big national presence, having a lot of hype and anticipation, and sometimes rather than or more often than not, it seems they kind of let you down.
Outcome
in the big
is not
game.
that expectation. That's right.
Yes, the outcomes do not match the fan expectation, the national expectation that comes every year. And again, the Cowboys haven't won an NFC championship since 1996. I mean,
haven't even been to the NFC championship game since then.
Right. And Notre Dame in that same time span, at least from what I can remember, they've lost in a national championship. They've lost in 2 playoff games. They've lost in 3 to 4 New Year's Six bowl games. I see a lot of parallels. And so that was team number one. Team
30,
number
just
two.
I'll finish on that so we don't have to double back. But 35 years since Notre Dame won a national championship, 27 since the Cowboys did. And, they're like in both cases, like you're talking about polar, like even so, like on field results have shown that neither of them, both of them have had, like you said, Notre Dame gets to a national championship game and the playoffs, 3 undefeated regular seasons, can't punch it through. In terms of big games, they've lost 9 consecutive New Year's Six bowl games. The Cowboys have lost. They've only won 4 playoff games in nearly 30 years at this point. And in both cases, again, polarizing organizations, and you're starting to hear some of the same stuff from Notre Dame fans that I think, can be said of the Cowboys and Jerry Jones for a long time. Do you care more about winning or just making the money?
Right.
So I think that there are a ton of similarities. That was the similarity I had. I'm curious to see what the other one is that you have.
It's actually within the same state, the University of Texas. I think that for a lot of the same reasons, people expect Texas to be really good based off of past success. And every year we talk about, this is the year for Texas. Texas is back. They're going to make some noise again. And they go 8-4, and they go 7-5, and
Right.
they barely scrape 500. I mean, that's the definition of the Cowboys the last 25 years or so. Just a lot of expectations to start, a lot of this is the season they turn it around, and it just hasn't happened. And so I think that Texas is another very similar team in terms of a comparison to the Cowboys.
Yeah, I think that that's a good one. I hadn't thought about that, but you're absolutely right. You always, just like you said, are they back? And, the fact that they're both from Texas, and Oklahoma's not far away either. And Indy Cheat Sheet says that Oklahoma's another one because of Barry Switzer. And and at least common, but, the difference, I guess in recent years, like you can definitely say, because what year was that? Was that 99 or 2000 that Oklahoma won a championship? So I guess at least they have a championship more recently, but in recent years, they've been to a lot of playoffs, but they've never actually won anything once they've gone to the playoffs. So, a lot of regular season wins, but the other side of that is at least Oklahoma and for that matter, Texas has a national championship too. Again, more recently, but in recent years, been a lot of expectations that have gone unfulfilled. Now, speaking of which, interesting one that I saw here. In the last 30 years, Ohio State has only lost 66 games under 5 different head coaches, but they've also only won 2 national championships in those 3 decades. Meanwhile, Alabama, Florida, Nebraska, LSU have all lost more than 100 games in that same span, but they each have at least 3 national championships. And obviously, Alabama, a lot more than that. As a fan, which of those would you take for the next 30 years?
So I'm going to do a little simple Ricky Bobby math here for everyone. If you're not first, you're last. And if you're last, you're last. I don't care about the regular season wins. That's all window dressing. Those get you to the national championships. I care about the national championships themselves. People don't talk about teams and say, yeah, they won a lot of games, a lot of 10, 11 win seasons. And, they were really good consistently. They talk about your legacy and the amount of national championships you win. That's all that people care about. When can you get the national championship off your back? I mean, look at the Cubs. They couldn't get it off their back for 100 years. That's all everyone talked about, no matter how many good regular season teams they had over that span of 100 years. I'll put it like this. Notre Dame could go 6-6 in 17 seasons and win 3 national championships in the other, and I would love that. It would make up for all the 6-6 seasons.
Yeah, exactly. They could win 1 national championship. Like, would you trade 1 national championship for a bunch of 6-6 seasons in the next 30 years? Now, there'd be a lot of griping in between, that's for sure. But just win the national, like you said, the regular season wins mean absolutely nothing if it doesn't turn it, just like what we were just talking about with unfulfilled expectations for Notre Dame and Cowboys and, Oklahoma, Texas, whoever it happens to be. It does not matter. 2 national championships, 3 national championships, trade it all, trade all the regular season wins for one of those national championships. That's all that matters. I think, wouldn't you trade right now a national championship for anything else that happened in between?
Oh, 100%. I'd do it for a Cowboys Super Bowl as well.
Yeah, exactly. Interesting question, or a comment rather, here that Gregory Perez made. He says the clear difference between Notre Dame fans preseason and Texas fans is that rational Notre Dame fans will try to be rational. Rational Texas fans will try to convince themselves that they're in the same league as Bama. I agree with that to a point, but what's your definition of rational? Because I definitely think, and I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with this, but the expectations at Notre Dame, it's what? National championship or bust, right? So there are plenty of people who will tell you, that if they're not winning a national championship, it's an unsuccessful season. I'm not saying that that's a majority of the fan base, but there are plenty of people who have that mindset. Do you agree or disagree, Jess?
I think the part that I agree with the most is that Notre Dame fans are a bit more rational. I think that Texas
you do think that Notre Dame fans are at least by and large more rational than Texas fans.
Yeah, I think the Texas fans are a lot like the Notre Dame fans where, the Cowboy fans where they just get blinded. They don't look at anything around them and they're just, this is our year. This is it. We're going to be a great team. And it's like, did you analyze everything that's going on around you right now? Or are you just blindly hopeful and optimistic like that every year?
Greg says he still thinks that Notre Dame fans are fanatics. I don't disagree with that. That's why we're here, right? That's why we're having a good time. Tuck a little ball in late June. College baseball's Golden Spikes Award winner, which is the equivalent, it's college baseball's equivalent of the Heisman Trophy, was announced minutes before Game 2 of the College World Series Finals Sunday. All 3 finalists for the award were playing in that game in Omaha. What do you think about the timing of the announcement of that award?
It's the worst timing there is. You either announce it right after Super Regionals end, or you wait until today as soon as the College World Series has concluded. But there is no advantage, no benefit, no positive, nothing good comes out of announcing it in the middle of the championship series. And it doesn't even matter. Like say they announced that and the finalists, none of them were a part of the game. I still don't care. The what is important and what you're taking away from the attention of the actual championship series itself. And so again, you either announce it right before the College World Series starts, or you wait until today, and wait until the season is completely over.
Well, yeah, you could even Friday was an off day in Omaha. There were no games on Friday. The in between they played on Thursday to get into the finals, and then the finals started on Saturday. Why not do a little ceremony on Friday, especially since all the guys were there? Or like you said, just do it before the College World Series. There's plenty of, do it before the series starts. You've got everyone congregating in Omaha anyway. Just do it like the day before the series starts, or like you said, right after the Super Regionals. It's just the fact that you would literally make this announcement minutes before the teams are getting ready to take the field just makes absolutely no sense to me. Again, you're on the biggest stage as it is. Have a little, build a ceremony out of it. But to be doing it right before a game is actually starting is one of the weirdest things that I think I've ever heard. Speaking of the College World Series, if you watched any of the series, you probably heard about the Jello Shot Challenge at a place called Rocco's, which is right across the street from Charles Schwab Field. They kept a tally board inside the bar. Fans would buy shots during the College World Series, $5 per Jello shot, and they kept tabs on the board of like whose fan base was buying the most. LSU lapped the field with more than 65,000 shots. The other 7 teams combined for around 27,000. So you do the math on that. That's more than 92,000 Jello shots in a little bit more than a week. $5 a pop, 460,000 total dollars just in Jello shots at one bar. How did
that doesn't even include tips or taxes?
That's right. My question, Jess, how did someone not think of this sooner? Like, this is only like a recent phenomenon within the last few years that this thing has started taking off.
I think that the only reason you don't see this more often is because think of a championship series where all the teams are in one spot and all the games are being played in one spot, right? Like the Super Bowl is 2 teams when it's all down to the end. That's just like every finals, right? 2 teams. The closest thing that in comparison is the NCAA tournament, right? But the Final Four is at a different location. The Sweet 16 is at a different location. The round of 32 is at a different location. So the reason why this is successful because you have 8 teams in a championship series, all in a smaller, relatively smaller city of Omaha, Nebraska. So I think that baseball is truly the only, this venue and this College World Series is the only venue that can truly capitalize on something like this. So I'm not surprised that we haven't seen it outside of this realm, but for it not coming up or being an idea for the College World Series for this long is shocking to me because like you said, it's just like it's like this bar should just maximize this money as much as they can every year because you're not going to see a 2-week span like this until a year later.
They literally just print money, and all they had to do was buy a dry erase board and put up the names of 8 teams up there.
It was the easiest concept, least amount of money, most profit ever.
And like now you share it on social media so everyone sees it, everyone hears about it. And of course,
and
LSU
then you make it a
shows
competition
up.
Within the competition.
Exactly. And it's, you make a competition out of it. And you're just like anyone who comes into the place. Are you disappointed that you didn't do a Jello shot last year when we were out there to watch Notre Dame?
I drank enough in other areas, but I should have
drank your Uncle Sluggo under the table.
I should have dumped some of those Jello shots down Uncle Sluggo's throat to make him feel better about losing his salad while we were there.
That's right. By the way, the guy who is one of the founders of Raising Cane's, he's a Baton Rouge resident. He bought $30,000 worth of Jello shots when he went out there last week. 6,000 total shots in one drop. 30 grand.
Must have been a nice tax write-off for him supporting the local LSU
fans. And they actually, to try to make up for the fact that they're selling alcohol, basically, they give $1 from every shot to the food pantries, in the local towns of each school. So they do make a little charity work out of the whole thing as well. But it's just they're printing money by making it, like you said,
it's $500,000 in 2 weeks.
I know, for very little work. And it's like, again, you're right across the street from the ballpark. People are going to go there anyway. Even Henry is going crazy for it right now.
Do you see him back there just rolling around? He is going crazy. He is fired up. He knows the show is almost over and I've been gone all day. So he's like, Dad, I need you to come play with me.
That's right. All right. Well, that's going to do it for tonight. Thanks for being here. We will be back, of course, tomorrow. Vince will be in for the mailbag. Jesse will be in later this week. I think all 3 of us, I just did 4, but I think all 3 of us plus Henry will be around on Friday for the Rapid Fire show as well. And Henry is the world's biggest Notre Dame fan. He's back there doing his thing right now. Hit the like button on your way out. We will talk to you tomorrow. Of course, subscribe, rate, and review on your podcast platforms. We will see you later on